Friends. In 1871, Paris was burning. Boom! The liberal revolution had failed, and reactionary forces were rounding up the rebels by the thousands for summary execution. Amidst the carnage, a 16-year-old boy named Arthur Rimbaud watches in horror as his youthful ideals collapse in flames. Now, Rimbaud wants to be a poet, but he understands that in these times, to write about cute themes like puppies or rainbows, that would be tantamount to supporting the tyrannical bourgeoisie. Nah! Rimbaud wants to write a different type of poetry, which will require a different type of living. In 1871, Rimbaud declares, "A poet makes himself a seer by an immense, long, deliberate derangement of the senses, all forms of love, of suffering, of madness. He searches himself. He exhausts within himself all poisons." So, essentially, Rimbaud is saying that to become a great poet, he's going to do three things. He's going to drink a lot of absinthe, smoke a shitload of hash, and engage in lots of controversial fucking. In this lifestyle choice of his, Rimbaud's not being completely original. He's partially inspired by events that had already transpired quarter of a century prior, because you see, friends, in 1848, Paris was burning. So liberal revolutionaries had risen up against the king, and a young poet had taken to the barricades, musket in hand. And that poet's name is Charles Baudelaire. Baudelaire is screaming in the streets to anyone who will listen, "Let's go kill General Apig!" Now, General Jacques Apig here is the monarchist commander in charge of quelling the rebellion. But more importantly, he is Baudelaire's stepfather. So to our poet friend, he's the ultimate symbol of oppression, stepdad. And even though Baudelaire fails to kill his stepdad, the rebels successfully kick out the king, and they hold an election only to elect a mediocre, incompetent autocrat who immediately abolishes democracy, leading to decades of tyranny. Shit happens, friends. So vote smart. Now, Baudelaire is very much upset by this political turn of events. He refuses to engage in that society, choosing instead to waste his life away in Parisian bars and opium dens and sleazy brothels. Through this degradation, he's looking for some sort of poetic inspiration, but instead all he finds is syphilis. And as the deadly venereal disease courses through his body, Baudelaire, he sits down to write, with the dual themes of sex and decay never far from his mind. Sometime in the 1850s, he pens a poem that will remain banned in France until 1949.
Whoa.
Yeah, fuck France. That poem is titled The Metamorphoses of the Vampire, and it goes thusly. Meanwhile, the woman, from her strawberry lips, like a snake on red-hot coals, writhing her hips, kneading her breasts against her iron busk, let flow these words with a heavy scent of musk. My mouth is wet, and I know deep in bed how to bury your conscience till he's dead. All sorrows die upon my breasts, and I can make old men laugh happily as children for my sake. For the man who sees me naked, I replace the moon, the sun, and all the stars in space. I am so skilled, dear scholar, in love's charms, that when I hug you in my ruthless arms, or shy and lustful, frail and forceful when I yield taut nipples to the teeth of men, the mattress swoons in commotion under me, and impotent angels damn themselves for me. When she had sucked the marrow from every bone, I turned to her as languid as a stone, to give her one last kiss, and saw her thus, in slimy, rotten wineskin, full of pus. is this children. I hear there's children watching on live stream tonight. You're welcome. Okay, so this poem comes out in Baudelaire's poetry anthology, The Flowers of Evil, Les Fleurs du Mal. And when this book comes out in 1857, it causes a huge scandal. Like, the book is censored, poems are banned, Baudelaire is tried and convicted of public indecency, and normally I would say, fuck the censors. But in this case, I have a little bit of empathy for those assholes. Some of the imagery in this book is intense. Like, there's scenes of flies crawling over vulvas and corpses twerking with an overflow of maggots. And it expresses the poet's desire to slice a gash into a sleeping lover's side and ejaculate it, like, inside it. It's ugly, nasty stuff. But I want to emphasize that Baudelaire is purposefully writing about these ugly things to try and find a beauty in the ugliness, to find the flowers in the evil, so to speak. Consider, for instance, the impact of his simple poem titled Beauty. I am as lovely as a dream in stone, my breast on which each mind says death in turn. All poets fall in silence, doomed to burn with love eternal as everlasting matter. So the solid imagery in this poem really influences the great sculptor Auguste Rodin of the thinker fame. He's inspired by the poem to create his masterpiece, I Am Beautiful, in which the man is forever trying to fuck the willing beauty, but can't ever reach on up inside her. He's got eternal blue balls. It's not funny. That horniness is agony. Agony. Which is why Rodin places these figures on top of his gates of hell, there, on the very upper left. Because Rodin understands that in Baudelaire's cosmology, beauty leads to damnation, but that also damnation is beautiful. And it's not just Rodin who's inspired. As artists begin to illustrate Baudelaire's poetry, they inadvertently come up with a new art style, a new art movement later referred to as the Decadence movement. It's a proto-surrealism that rejects realistic depictions in favor of nightmarish imagery that get at the cosmic horror, which is at the heart of our reality. But it's like a sexy cosmic horror. Horror. As for Baudelaire, that fame does not translate into fortune. His poems sell poorly. Nobody wants to read about, maggots. He falls into poverty that exacerbates his disease and his addictions. He has a stroke and dies in horrible agony at the age of 46. Baudelaire's terrible last days notwithstanding, he's still a huge inspiration for our young friend, Rimbaud. Remember him? Rimbaud proclaims that Baudelaire is the first seer, king of poets, a real god. Rimbaud wants to be Baudelaire, to live his sex, drugs, and poetry lifestyle. And the drugs are easy to come by, but Rimbaud still needs a lover, which is why when teenage Rimbaud meets 27-year-old poet Paul Verlaine, the two immediately start fucking. Pretty soon, Verlaine leaves his wife and newborn child to be with Rimbaud. The two of them go off vagabonding across Europe, drinking heavily, screwing publicly, and writing catchy sonnets about anuses. Dark and wrinkled like the purple thing. That's the anus for the kids that are listening. It breathes, smile, nestled humbly along the still damp froth of love. Saucy stuff. But sexy anal poetry notwithstanding, I do want to emphasize that this relationship between a 16-year-old boy and a 27-year-old man is incredibly toxic, full of violence and abuse. One night, the two of them are locked in a hotel room where they've been drinking for days, and Rimbaud says that he wants to end the relationship. To which Verlaine replies by whipping out this exact revolver and screaming, "I'll teach you to leave!" He then fires twice, bang, bang, striking Rimbaud in the wrist. The cops are called, Verlaine is carted off to jail, and Rimbaud moves back in with his mother, where he takes time to recuperate from wounds, both physical and mental, while editing together a few slim volumes of poetry. Now, Rimbaud's poems, like those of Baudelaire, get at the cosmic horror of existence, and yet they move beyond Baudelaire's earthly human forms to get at something that is truly cosmic. I've seen the low sun smeared with mystic horrors, set fires to monster fires of violet, resembling actors in very ancient plays. Slotted light shimmered away on trembling waves, glaciers, silver suns, and bloodied skies, stranding in valleys yellow with disease, where giant serpents, eaten away by flies, fall with black perfume from twisted trees. When he turns 20, Rimbaud decides to give up poetry. He shaves his head. Here he is. He joins the army, deserts after 2 weeks, and then goes to North Africa, where he deals in guns and ivory, only to succumb to a mysterious disease at the age of 37. Today, his legacy lives on, not only through his revolutionary poetry, but also in his dangerous formula for living, which states that in violent and repressive times, one can rebelliously create through essential self-destruction. And this formula works okay for like 100 years. Like consider, for instance, the United States in 1968, when cities burned, and a young singer-songwriter named Jim Morrison proclaimed, "I believe in a long, prolonged derangement of the senses in order to obtain the unknown." Morrison goes on to drop a whole bunch of acid, write some brilliantly tripping music, only to overdose in a Parisian bathtub at the age of 27. Today, we live in very volatile times, and that old solution of sex and substances has unfortunately been co-opted by the dreaded bourgeoisie. Just ask your finance friends. We need a new formula for living, which is why I would now like to raise my glass and offer a toast to creating revolutionary art while keeping our livers partially intact. Cheers.
Thank you.